After working out some audio issues that turn out to be the result of something really obvious and stupid. But we're here now.
Yep. And we went and saw
It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood.
Yep. And it was pretty good. I liked it. I know that there were some people who were talking about it, saying that it was slow and whatnot, but I'm like, it's a movie about freaking Mr. Rogers.
It's supposed to be. Okay, let's get a few things out of the way. This is not. Do not go into this movie thinking it's a Mr. Rogers biopic.
No,
it is not that. It is about. I read the article that was done by the actual interviewer,
Lloyd Kaufman.
Yeah, and I saw a bunch of interviews that Tom Hanks and the whole crew behind this movie did before we saw this movie. So they talk about how the character in this movie is not an accurate reflection of who he really was, but it is a good reflection of the friendship that developed between Mr. Rogers and this guy. I forget his
Lloyd Kaufman.
Lloyd Kaufman. Okay.
Yeah, it's the Lloyd. It's basically Mr. Rogers through the lens of this guy.
Yeah, we're following his story basically, and we're seeing how Mr. Rogers affects his life.
Yeah.
So, and for those of you who don't already know this, I don't want this to throw people off because it is disconcerting if you don't know this going into it. The framing device for telling the story is like an episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. So the movie begins right out of the gate with Tom Hanks coming out as Mr. Rogers singing the song like it's the beginning of an episode and talking directly to the camera and talking to the audience like it's an episode. And the whole movie is done that way. So know that going into this. Yeah, and
I will say this, there was one moment when them shooting the movie, like, I thought it was kind of cool. The way they shot the movie like that. Like, it's like when they transition from one place to the other, it's like the little toys.
The little models.
That Mr. Rogers used.
All the cityscapes are models.
The dream sequence, I'm like, okay, this is weird as shit.
That was weird. I was like, I was assuming that it was the movie's version of, okay, this is the land of make-believe section.
Yeah.
Because the whole movie is done like an episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. So that part of it was like okay, we're in the land of make-believe now. Yeah. So that's I'm assuming that's what that was.
Well, it was obvious, like, he basically had like an episode. You know, he passed out. He's having a freaking dream, is what it was. Because like I said, there's some weird shit
in that
scene. But then it makes sense because he's basically having a nervous breakdown.
Of sorts.
And
which my thought was, if he collapsed in the studio, why would he wake up in Fred's house? He'd be going to the hospital.
I think the way that they depicted it was that he actually passed out during the first interview. Remember when he was at his apartment?
No.
You see him, he comes up to me, he's like, "Oh, well,
I didn't get
it looked like that." That's what I'm saying. It's weird. It's weird because it looks like he might have passed out in the studio. He might have passed out at the apartment, or he might have passed out at his house. It's like, at some point he passed out,
and it led to the dream.
And it led to the dream, but
that's just a small part of the movie.
Yeah, but the basic gist of it is, Lloyd is told by his publisher to do basically a little short article about Fred Rogers.
Yeah, it's not supposed to be an expose.
It's not supposed to be an expose, but he's like, and Lloyd has a reputation for being kind of a hard ass, and you find out that Fred Rogers actually wanted him. He was like the only one that he actually said, like, I will talk to this guy. So he goes thinking that, you know, obviously, you know, that this is a work. You know, that Mr. Rogers is a character, and that the real person is like much more jaded or whatnot.
He thinks he's playing a character, and he thinks he's gonna, you know, when his wife says, you know, don't ruin my childhood when you do this, she goes, at least you're gonna interview somebody good. And he goes, we'll see. And so he's prepared to like dig up dirt on people. That's what he's used to doing. So he goes in completely unprepared for how genuine and how nice and genuinely interested, as most people were with Fred.
Which is, and the thing, like, to put it bluntly, like, he literally asked me, like, what are you like, and now, like, this is the character, and Mr. Fred Rogers is like, I don't understand the question, because he's like, this is who I am.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but over the course of the movie, you're seeing Fred affect how he reacts to certain things that happen in his life.
You're seeing the effect that he has just on his life in general, just the way he interacts with his wife, with his kid, with his dad, just a whole bunch of stuff that.
So it's actually a pretty good movie based off the original article.
Yes.
Because the original article was not about it was as much about Lloyd himself as it was about Fred Rogers. But as far as the performances go, I think the acting was really good. I think Tom Hanks did a really good job of channeling Fred Rogers.
Yeah, and that's an important distinction to make. He's not trying to do an impression.
Yeah.
A lot of people, I've seen a few people review this movie already who are like, oh, I couldn't help but see Tom Hanks playing, and I'm like, he's not trying to imitate Fred. He's just trying to like capture the spirit and mannerisms of Fred.
Yeah. And
that's something that I saw I saw them talk about a lot in interviews when I looked up interviews of them talking about the making of the movie. They said, Tom Hanks talked about how the director came to him and said, look, you're not going to be trying to mimic him. You're not going to be we're not going to try to make you look like him. You're not doing an imitation. You just need to capture what he was like.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
It's less of a physical performance and more of an emotional one.
Right. And also, going back to what you talked about before at the beginning, the movie is very slow paced.
Yes.
But that's very intentional, because that was the whole point. That was something that Fred Rogers himself was trying to get across to everybody, that you should slow down and take time to do things. And we're so used to just, okay, move on, let something happen, come on, let's go. So it can throw you off when the movie just takes its time to have an entire scene where it seems like they're just sitting there and they're talking, or an entire minute of silence goes by through the course of the movie where nobody's saying anything. And you, the audience, are meant to sit there and contemplate along with the people in the movie. So there's moments that are very slow, but
they're slow by design.
Exactly.
They're intended to be
it's supposed to be that way.
This isn't an action film. And it is a dramatic film, but it's a dramatic film in its message, not so much in its delivery. It's
dramatic performances.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But it's a very subdued film.
Yes.
So because Fred Rogers himself was a very subdued person.
Yes.
And you're meant to get that feeling from this.
Yes, and I will say that, like, Tom Hanks certainly captured Mr. Rogers' persona. I will say, like, his way of speaking, his way of moving, like in the performance, he captured it perfectly. If not physical appearance, in performance, he absolutely nailed.
Yeah, it's just in like the way, because Mr. Rogers was very measured in the way he would speak, and it was intentional, and he did this intentionally.
Yep.
Because he was literally trying to just basically be a calming effect on everything he did. And that's what you get from Tom Hanks in this, and that's one of the things that some people say is like he just seems to just drone, and I'm like, well, that's if you look at how Fred Rogers talked, that's kind of how he was. He was a very even-keeled person.
I would also make this recommendation to anybody who sees this, and this is a very strong recommendation on my part. If you have not seen the documentary about Fred Rogers before you watch this movie, I think you're going to lose something. I think it greatly helps to have seen the documentary, Won't You Be My Neighbor? Because, or if you don't know some of the famous moments of Fred, like when he spoke to Congress and got the funding for PBS. Like, there are brief flashes of those moments, or moments from his previous interviews. All this stuff is on YouTube, by the way. You can look up all of this stuff.
I think that whole documentary's on there.
I don't know if they posted the whole documentary.
I'm pretty sure it is.
But in any case, if you have not seen any of that, I think something's going to be lost. This is a great supplement to the documentary, but I think that it's necessary to understand through the documentary who he is before you go to see this movie.
Yeah, he was a very genuine person.
Yeah,
like that's the thing that really threw Lloyd Kaufman when he when he did this article was like he expected this to be a character. This was the actual person. And also, if you didn't grow up with Mr. Rogers, or if your parents never like made you watch Mr. Rogers on PBS, you're not gonna really, you might not quite understand why they would even do a movie about this guy. He was a very, very important figure in
millions of people's lives. Well, I've seen again. What's his name? Somebody Rice, the guy who plays Lloyd. He said he had never, because he grew up. He's not American. He grew up in like overseas. Like
he's one of them damn foreigners.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly where he's from, but he's from like the UK area.
One of them countries that doesn't matter. That's okay. We'll let that shit out.
So he's never. He said in the interviews he's done in the promotional tour for this movie that he didn't know anything about Fred before he started. Before he came onto the project, and I've seen a lot of people who said they didn't know anything about Fred until they watched the documentary and how much it affected them watching it, and after the documentary they wanted to know everything about him and they wanted to watch episodes about him. So if you don't know anything about Fred, again, I reiterate, please, for the love of God, watch the documentary first. Otherwise, a lot of this movie is going to be lost on you, because the framing device is like an episode of the show. And if you've never seen the show,
you're going to be like, what the hell is this cheap-ass looking shit?
Yeah, you're not going to understand any of it.
But, no, I don't want to really dig too deep into it, because I think it's the kind of movie where you don't want to spoil anything, and every little scene has something that you can spoil.
Yeah, you don't want to go into detail about it.
Who's the player's wife?
I don't know her name.
She did a really good job.
Yeah, everybody did a good job in this.
The acting was good in this.
Cooper's in this.
If you know anything about Mr. Rogers and you grew up with him when you were like when we were kids, there were genuine moments in this with a little tear jerking.
Yes.
A little bit of moisture might have started forming in the corner of my eye. But and this is just a good movie to. It's just a good, heartfart movie, and
you don't get many of those.
Oh my God! Today, hell no. Everybody's they're like us. They're just jaded and crass as shit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even just again, because this was Fred, they intentionally made the movie reflect Fred. So because the movie is so slow paced, I can't even compare it to like kids' movies that are all bright colors and flashing lights, and this is very like the movie itself, just by being what it is almost like forcing you, the audience, to be like, okay, slow down, calm down. The
car just pulled up and it just got bright as shit.
Yep.
Oh my God.
Turn off your freaking headlights.
Well, we're done here.
Yeah, we're almost done.
I love how there's like a line right here.
Yeah, okay. Well, they just turned off their light.
Anyway,
so,
I like the movie. It's definitely and again, this is one of those rare movies where you can actually sit down and watch it with your kids.
Yes, you could.
So,
although it depends on their age. The younger they are, the more bored they're going to be, because they're not going to know anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's cool.
I recommend go seeing it. I recommend, even though it's not the kind of like big CGI fest where you say I need to see this in the theater, please go see it in the theater, because the movies like this need to be supported. Yeah,
if you can. Okay, I'll be a little more. I'll just be a dick. You could probably wait to watch this on DVD, but if you can afford it, go see it at the theater.
Yeah, I'm not saying, make a choice, but if you have to make a choice between this and paying your bills or feeding your kids, that you should go see this and let the kids starve. I'm saying, if you're going to go see a movie, this is worth seeing in the theater.
Yeah, this is like, it's like that discussion I had with Dan Panosian about that movie Crawl.
Yeah.
I was like, why would I want to go see the movie theater? He's like, do you want to keep seeing the same crap in the theater? It's like, yeah, it may not be the best movie in the world, but if it's entertaining, it's worth going to see at the theater, so that they maybe go outside the box a little bit.
Exactly. The movies that are different, that that aren't just the same, like, new big blockbuster Marvel movie. Like, those are the movies that you want to support so that we get more of those, so that we don't just keep getting the same shit over and over and over again.
But yeah, this was a good movie. Check it out. I will have this posted up shortly, and yeah, we'll see you guys. What is the next movie? Star Wars?
Well, you guys, that'll be you guys. You guys can take care of that. Like, I'm not nearly as into Star Wars as you guys. I can skip it.
Into Star Wars anymore? That's a discussion another time. But anyway,
I don't know when it comes out, but next one we have to go see that I want to see with it is 1917.
I think that comes out this weekend. That is that is another one on my list though. But okay, guys.
All right.
We'll check you guys out later.
Yep.
Bye. I'm hungry.